and welcome to today's Amy podcast. We're recording this in the middle of May, and I'm Richard Daniel Curtis. I'm obviously the chair of the Association of Mental Health and Education. Normally, this podcast has been hosted by Lily on my team. Lily has now moved on to Pastors New. So fantastic. I was just talking about her fantastic career opportunities that she's just progressed to. So real shame to lose her, but honestly, for her, it's been really fantastic. So you've got me, is what's happened here, and I'm going to be trying my best to steer the conversation this afternoon. So with me, we've got Yvonne, we've got Alex, and we've got Claire. I'm going to go round and get them to introduce themselves. As you know, so you know who you're listening to. So let's start off with you, Yvonne.
Okay, hiya. My name's Yvonne. I'm one of the joint CEOs of Nurture International. We train teachers, we work in schools, we look at a whole school nurturing approach for learning. We're a separate business company to the other one, which was Nurture UK, apart from the fact that Richard and I worked together many years as regional coordinators, which was Nurture Network then. My background's been mainly special. I was a secondary teacher, then working in special SEMH school, then worked in Prus, worked in special primary school for SEMH, and became the head there for 5 years, went in advisory. I'm sounding very old, so I'm going to stop. But then worked for Nurture Network and set up their consultancy and training there. And then we set up, Alison and myself have set up Nurture International. So we work globally. We're very, very lucky with that, training teachers. What I did say is that Nurture, I don't think people are aware, was set up 50 years ago, the Nurture Group, for children going through trauma. It was the very first recognition of, it wasn't called trauma then, I'm not sure it was just children that were really, really couldn't access mainstream curriculum.
Maladjusted.
Is that the term I didn't like to
That's the
say that,
phrase.
Richard.
So we go.
So yeah, no. So that's my background, more or less, and it's great to be here. But just saying that well-being to me, it's nurturing those children so that they can access learning.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Yvonne. Thank you. Alex, let's go to you next.
Hi, I'm Dr. Alexandra Hennessey. I am a lecturer and researcher at the University of Manchester in the Manchester Institute for Education. I've done lots and lots of school-based research, and more recently it's been very much focused on well-being. We've done numerous different studies that have kind of got different perspectives and different approaches to supporting well-being in schools. We've got some research on pupil voice and what students and pupils actually think about what well-being should look like and who should support that. And more recently, I've done work with the Youth Sport Trust, which had very much a focus on whole school, very holistic approach to wellbeing and how schools can do that successfully. And we did a series of case studies, and I'll talk more about this through the conversations today about what we found there, but how various different schools across the UK from very different settings have approached wellbeing in very different ways, and why, and how they've done that holistically and how they've really focused on teacher wellbeing as part of supporting student wellbeing. So I'll talk more about those and some examples of some of the really interesting and creative work that some of our schools have done.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm very interested. I'm very interested in your research. Cool. Let's move on to Claire.
Hello, I'm Claire Cannon, and I work nationally as an inclusion consultant. That has two main arms, if you like, of the business. One is delivering training in schools, predominantly around SEMH, so the MH being mental health, relational practice, trauma-informed approaches. It can involve whole school training. Sometimes I work with smaller cohorts of staff or even individual staff members as required by the setting. And then the other half of that business is working with parents around all the legal stuff with SEN, because it can feel really overwhelming, all the laws around EHCPs and needs assessment requests, appeals, tribunals, all of those things, which come full circle, impact the parent's mental health, which can obviously then feed into how the child may be feeling. So there's a kind of there's something cyclical going on there. But all of that came about having been assistant head in an SEMH alternative provision, and actually wanting to take all of the things that I'd kind of learned from there and share it with the wider world. So go back into mainstreams, which is where I sort of started my career, and kind of go, actually, there are things we can do. Whilst there may not be a magic wand, there are certainly things that we can all change and hopefully support the whole person, because that is very much what I'm about, is supporting the whole person to grow, not just how are they doing in a particular curriculum area. So that's me.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, I should warn everyone that's listening, you will have noticed, if you're watching this on camera rather than audio, that all of us are working at home today. So we're all recording this from home. So I can guarantee there's four of us. At least one of us is going to be interrupted by a pet, a child, or the door at some point in this discussion. And we will just keep going. So it's life, isn't it? It's life in this post-pandemic world. I mean, I have to say, for me, it wasn't much of a change, because I've actually been delivering online training through Zoom and pre-recorded training and things like that since about 2015. I was talking about this. I used to do training for schools, where we used to film it, and we used to burn it onto a CD-ROM and then send it through the post. So we've been doing online learning before there was an online that could cope with online learning. And so yeah, so if we go back 12 years, that's how we used to do what we called e-learning at that time.
I'm too young for that, Richard. I'm too young.
You see, no, I'm not. I promise you. I promise you. Dear me. Right. Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about thinking about that we're not necessarily going to get to an answer, but thinking about the question: is the current education system? We'll talk about the UK education system. So, Yvonne, it'd be lovely to hear some of your experiences from different countries as well. But is the current UK education system designed to support well-being, or is it ending up fundamentally at odds with well-being? This conversation come about it, and we're doing a piece of research within Amy at the moment, where we're going out to our members, because we've got several thousand members. We're about 5% of all educational settings, schools and colleges in the UK are now members of Amy, and so we're going out to our members and we're asking them about provision, support that's in place for neurodiverse pupils during formal exams and formal assessments, because obviously that really typifies where you might get the conflict in between the education system and individuals' well-being, and so we're currently doing a piece of research around that, and that then prompted a conversation within our team and within the office about, well, actually, but is that reflected in the whole education system? Do we have an education system that is just about results and doesn't matter about the well-being? And that's a secondary thing. And from my point of view, I like to think about well-being. Mental health and well-being is universal. It's not about the X% that are experiencing difficulties. It includes them, but actually mental health and well-being is about all of our staff, all of our pupils, everyone in an environment. And actually, where are we? So there we go. So who wants to kick off?
But I think with well-being, going around schools and in Wales as well, and we put the whole school nurture approach in for learning, that well-being's there. It's been key. People have been given funding for well-being, and then what you find is they put a poster up in the staff room, or somebody's got a bottle of wine, and it's not, it's understanding what well-being actually is, and it's very aligned to self-esteem and developing the whole. I think Claire said earlier, the whole child. It's about the whole person, whether they're an adult or whether they're a child. And that to me is fundamentally struggling in school, because the teachers are exhausted. The adults are struggling every day to get in because COVID's not over. COVID's still there, the repercussions in school. I see it with my own family, I see it with the education system at large. And schools were set up for standardization, academic attainment, performance metrics, compliance. I'm not going to say control because I hate that word, but it was about that behavior management, that control. If you don't control your class, you're not going to have your job. But I had that said to me, if you're not going to control your class, you're going to be out of here. You'll be out of a job very soon, lady. Spoken to like that quite a few years ago. I did never control my class. I developed my class. I went and found nurture and a nurturing approach, and we grew and developed together. And you know what? The fun that we had was incredible, but you don't hear a lot of laughter in schools. So to me, well-being is fundamental. Like your self-esteem should be developing. Everybody's self-esteem is fundamental to developmental growth in schools. So has that sort of bumped off the conversation there, ladies? Get too passionate.
There's definitely there's lots of good practice of wellbeing at schools going on, but there's most certainly common threads of barriers to that inherent in the education system that the teachers in our work have constantly talked about. And while they want to put wellbeing at the forefront, they are battling, the focus on academics and Ofsted's always being the priority. And having to, where do we put wellbeing? How do we focus on that as well as trying to get results? And there are some schools who have just been brave and have just jettisoned kind of that kind of approach and said, if we focus on wellbeing, all these other things will fall into place. But they talked about having to be incredibly brave to go down that road. But yeah, common barriers we always get is focus on academics needs to be the priority. Time, staff training, funding, and just all these other competing priorities within a heavily kind of choked education system. There's so much that teachers have to do that. How do we get this in there as well? And having to actually have the time and space and the strategic leadership to be able to do that and allow the time and space for that is common threads we've had as challenges from schools trying to really embed well-being as part of this kind of whole school approach.
Well, I was told when I was a teacher, when I was the head of the school, we got top SATs results in a special school for behaviour, and the advisors came in and said that we had to go back to being more like a mainstream school. And my response was, thank you very much for your advice. We'll carry on doing what we're doing.
It's having the bravery to do that. And that's definitely what one of our head teachers talked about, being able to just say that, no, we know what we're going to do and this is going to work for us, and then showing the results.
As long as you're getting the results.
And that thing about results, I mean, it's always, I didn't realise, especially at the start of my career, I didn't realise that's what bugged me. You sort of start off and then I thought, what's my next step going to be? I was teaching predominantly science and a bit of maths, and at Bedfordshire, being quirky, had a 3-tier system. So I was in the middle school, so we kind of straddled the top 2 primary years and the first 2 secondary years, basically year 5 to year 8. And I love the age range actually, and picking back up on the nurture thread, I think it has its place very much so, particularly for children who do have some kind of additional need, but also just in general. But my sort of career trajectory, I looked at head of science, which is where I went next, and I very quickly thought, this is not kind of doing it for me. It's not giving me the job satisfaction. And I realized it was because it wasn't about the person. It was all about the grades. It was all about, has this child, as it was back then, the old 3A, 3B, 4C, whatever, have they made 2 steps progress in a year? I actually, it's going to sound very strange, it's not that I don't care at all, but I really can't get myself to put that front and centre, because that's such a narrow, it's such a narrow view of a human being, ultimately. And it's really interesting now sort of seeing things as I kind of moved out of that curriculum focus into Senko roles and then into SDMH provision. And you look back and you think, talking to a colleague who teaches primary year and top end of primary, year 5, year 6, and I said to her, you're sort of average and above, good, I know, attainment, I know, but in terms of what they could do mathematically, here's a GCSE paper, how much of it could they do? And when we worked out how much content is being shoved down their throats at primary, they actually, for want of a better word, that the stronger mathematicians would have been able to get a grade 2 or 3 in year 5, year 6. And you think, no wonder, we've got children with issues around self-esteem, as Yvonne, you said, well-being and self-esteem. And you just see it play out, when they come into, if you ever work in somewhere like a specialist provision, and they think they can't. They can't do school. They think they can't do maths. They, it's all prefaced with, I can't or I won't. And that the fear and anxiety is so real, and a lot of it, comes from the pressure that the teachers have been under to get those kids to know that stuff, regurgitate it in a test. And actually you think, what is the point of it all if we are just ending up with children who are not in a very good place? So who knows what tangent I've taken that off on, or what can of worms I've just opened up, but it's such a huge topic, Richard. I don't know how we're going to cover everything.
You've raised a really interesting point, and the same happened to me. I'm doing a piece of work at the moment. I'm doing a couple of pieces of work, one across Europe and one across the UK, where we're looking at developing mental health and wellbeing skills in young people from the age of 4 through to 20. And it's really interesting because we had a co-production meeting the other day with some volunteers, and Claire, you've just reminded me of what happened at that meeting, because actually I think there's a massive misconception that when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about SEND. And literally at this meeting, and this was a co-production meeting, talking about the wellbeing skills, resilience. We're talking about coping. We're talking about literacy, and what happened was they took it into a conversation about neurodiversity. And we ended up having a massive conversation about the needs of people with ADHD and people who are on the autistic spectrum. And I think actually part of the barrier, part of the problem that we've got when we talk about mental health is that people automatically segment that or pigeonhole it as we're talking about inclusion, we're talking about SEND, talking about this cluster. This is a cluster, not everyone.
And it should
That
be
was what I was saying earlier on in our little pre-conversation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That one of the training packages that I offer is building staff's awareness of mental health, but actually starting with that phrase, because if I say to staff, true or false, we all have physical health, it's 100%. Everyone goes, yeah. Everyone has had a bad back, a sore knee, a cough, a cold, things that make us physically feel a bit for whatever reason. And then you change the slide, one word, true or false, we all have mental health, and you just don't get that same definitive response. You get much more kind of variation, people not so sure. Yet I don't understand. Well, I do understand why you get it, because of the connotation that mental health has had in the past, and perhaps we're trying to address. But we've got to get past it. And actually, Richard, in my ideal world, we wouldn't have a split. We would just say we all have health.
Yeah, what should we do? But would you actually say, has it made it worse for people since SEMH, since it's become social, emotional, mental health? Has it become more of a SEND thing because it never was before? I'm just wondering the way it's been put. Is that where it's associated with now? I don't know.
It's an interesting one, because it was BESD, wasn't it, before? Behaviour, emotional, social difficulties. That's the category that went and got replaced. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think it is good that link was made, but it's a shame they stuck with mental health and didn't put something, either an extra word on the end, like difficulties or something akin to that, or used I don't know what, but a different phrase, because yes, I think it has contributed to it now having that skew.
Yeah. And what we feel now in Nurture International, we feel very, very strongly that it should be emotional safety for all. And we have so we have our 6 nurture principles for learning, and we have emotional safety in the centre, because if you've got emotional safety, you feel emotionally safe, then your mental health is probably going to be quite good, because you've worked on all the others. And I think that schools should be working around everybody feeling emotionally safe, so they can take risks, they can look at how they communicate, they can look at how they're, just take a little bit out of their secure base. So, that to us would be a massive way forward to improving mental health for all, and I totally agree with you, Richard. Should be universal.
It's really interesting you've just made that point, Yvonne. So we had a team meeting last week, and this is like hot off the press. We've just changed our mission, our company mission, and we've changed our social values, and we've changed inclusion. And we are our top social value now is to move beyond inclusion to a culture of true belonging.
Wonderful.
And
Yeah,
it's really, sorry, you've just triggered a
well,
whole
it
thing,
aligns, doesn't
honestly,
it?
but
Yeah.
literally, and just what you said just really matched up with what we've been thinking about as a team.
Yeah. I was going to add to that I think it depends how we talk about it, how we define it. Because I know in the literature there's lots of debate, and where does mental health and well-being sit? Are they separate? How are they related? What are the different things that sit under those umbrellas or are aligned with them? So we've already mentioned certain skills that I think are heavily associated with well-being and mental health: coping, self-esteem, resilience, those sort of skills. And I think those are the sort of skills that actually we need to be teaching at school, because they're the transferable skills that help with academics, they help with just life skills basically as well. So I think there's a lot of issues around terminology, some assumptions that what well-being and mental health are, and how sometimes they're not always used with clarity or used interchangeably when they shouldn't, and the words have different connotations sometimes. So I know with our work we've been very specific about whole school things and well-being initiatives and how that's different from mental health, but heavily related, obviously.
And the curriculum, if we're talking about the school curriculum, the nurture curriculum, we call it the nurture curriculum, and we actually don't see it is about the schools slowing down, but you have to have a maverick head to say, slow down, you move too fast. You do. But let's don't do a separate PSHE, put it into your curriculum. What we're thinking about, what do we want? Let's tie it into the curriculum and have fun today. Enjoy your lesson.
And naturally tie it in as well, not shoehorn it in, force it. I had a school once that were very proud. Richard, we've put a mental health objective on every lesson. And I was like, oh no. Because now there's gonna be some poor teacher there at 11 o'clock at night going, what's my mental health objective for this lesson? It's stressing me out. It's got to be that natural. It's got to be natural links.
There's one of our head teachers as part of the Well Skills project, that she talked about doing it by stealth, was her word. She wanted it to just embed in and not be seen as just yet another initiative, another thing we need to do. It should be part of our everyday practice, embedded through. But it's the time and space for leadership to do that. And she was a new head teacher, came into the school and just reshaped everything. So used a model of whole school wellbeing to do that, and had different staff doing different things as part of that. But it was all part of, it wasn't branded as this initiative we're now running with. It was just, this is going to underlie all of our practice and be our kind of our model or framework for kind of how we think about wellbeing at school holistically into everything. But I like that stealth. Done it by stealth.
Richard saying about the sort of having to have the wellbeing objective, and some of the bits you just said there, Alex. The word that kind of sprung to my mind is autonomy. And if we think, this is holistic across the school, that includes all the staff, not just the teachers, not just the TAs, it's everybody, the site agent, the cook, the cleaner, whoever. And that bit around autonomy, we seem to have gone the other way. I mean, we mentioned compliance. I think it was Yvonne earlier on. And we seem to have gone so far down that route. And every little thing that happens, it's, we need another rule. We need another, box that in, and you can't go out of it. And that in itself has a huge impact. And I make no apologies for harking back to the SEMH provision. It's not perfect, nowhere is, but the difference was quite stark, because we had those students coming in that had been absent from school, that had been excluded from school, that had all sorts of issues when they were in school around their engagement, how they, whether that was academic, whether it was with authority, whether it was whatever. And that bit around belonging and connectedness was absolutely front and center. And you'd see it with the teachers as well, but also that bit around autonomy. You get them in. If they come into your classroom, that's a win. Because for some of them, just stepping foot through the door was a real challenge. And actually, you saw then with the teachers, you have a child that comes to you, chronologically, they're perhaps year 10, but they've had so many issues with education that there's the gaps, and you perhaps at one topic, they might be absolutely fine if you want to kind of take them at year 10 level, but another topic, they might actually never have done it because of their issues. And therefore you need to start from, wherever that started, year 6, year 7, and having that freedom. And because it is holistically not measured as such, but the focus is on the holistic person. There isn't get this exam grade, get this many to a grade 4, get this many to be able to go on to college. It's not to say we don't have ambitions for the children. Absolutely we do. And yes, there are still things like target grades, but there's no absolute pressure on the staff to get those specific grades. The success is more around the engagement, more around, does that pupil feel safe enough to come into school, and are they feeling that they belong to something? And the more you sort of are talking about all these different things, that comes back to autonomy. The staff have got the autonomy to flex the approach to meet the need of the child. Yes, that's hard in mainstream when you've got a class of 30, but I don't think it's impossible. And I think when you were saying about some of these head teachers that have been brave and have really gone all in, I guess over time you'll perhaps start to see the results of that, and see the measures that are used, attendance, attainment, whatever, may well start to improve. I don't agree with having metrics, because humans are not just numbers, but I do understand why they exist. There we go.
No, but I do believe in high expectations for all, of all, and very clear boundaries, because everybody needs boundaries. People perceive nurture and well-being as going, oh, we love you, that's great, you can do what you want. No, it's high expectations, but it's giving them the environment and that support, which is what you've just been saying, Claire, to help them develop, and me develop. And you want the head to do, you want everybody in the school, don't you, to grow, with each other. It's that triangular. I think it was Heather Geddes who did that with the nurture. That thought so. The triangulation where the teacher and the pupil will learn, together, and that's fundamentally what you want. Because when you stop learning, you can go a bit brain dead, can't you? It's boring, and you look into it is so, and that affects your well-being. So it is about that high expectations, because I think sometimes people really do think, oh, they're don't worry about it, we'll just, and it's not, because it's very clear that you had high expectations for those pupils, just not that they had to get the top grade. And what you do find is when you have those maverick heads that allow people to have fun and enjoy and do within those clear boundaries and high expectations, because you want the child to develop to their potential and what's best for them, they get the results because the brains are emotionally safe. If you know the neuroscience behind it, nervous systems aligned, and then the child can learn and becomes more naturally curious. So teachers understanding the neuroscience behind it as well will help, and children understanding the neuroscience behind what how their brains work, helps them too. So,
and even looking at it from a developmental point of view, I was just reflecting on actually young children, infants, even in the womb, there's studies around the way that children are interacting with the world and things. Children are inquisitive. They want to have, they want to feel positive. They want to learn. And actually, are we wearing it out of them? Are we kind of taking it away? And actually, the point you're making is that's reinstilling it. I know, for us as adults, let's be honest, when we're on some conference or at some CPD or something like that, and it's fun and it's engaging, and there's opportunities to talk and there's opportunities to learn and to communicate and to network and all those things. Actually, we're more likely to get more out of it than if we just go and sit and listen. And how is it any different for children? In our schools.
Exactly.
And for the staff. I mean, you talk about, things being engaging and fun, and Yvonne saying about, development, and it gets boring if your brain, well, it certainly does for me, if I'm not, I've always got something on the go that I'm doing or, learning. Yet you see now these, and don't get me started on Ofsted, but talking about fidelity to schemes, and there's all these maths schemes and spelling schemes and phonics schemes. I just despair because I just think, where's the creativity gone? Where's the flexibility gone? And these teachers, particularly if they're at the beginning of their career, that is their only experience of teaching, is here's a equivalent to Richard's CD that arrives in the post. And
Thanks.
Press play. Thanks. I'm sure yours was much better, Richard.
I'm sure it was, Claire. I'm sure it was.
But point being, they're just being, the teachers are being spoon-fed content that they then spoon-feed to the children. So where does that go with the children at the moment, who are the next generation of teachers?
Yeah. And then you've got a class with 30 kids with all different personalities, different learning needs, and a set prescribed way of doing things. It's again, one of the challenges, how do we respond when we've got all these different learning styles, these different approaches? Some kids really academic and like that. Some kids don't need to learn through more hands-on, some through completely different way. It's that, I think that's one of the real challenges for teaching, is how to respond to all these different needs. And then at the higher level, the overall school context, the staff there, the different training, the different teaching backgrounds and pedagogical approaches. It's crazy how we've designed, here's this model, and one model doesn't fit all.
No, it really
and I think we are creating a lot of the issues.
Yeah.
Those systems and the rigidity is creating a lot of the issues. We talk about, is there a solution? Maybe there's no one thing, but I think if we could move away from, like you say, the one size fits all. That's my business tagline, by the way. But if we could move away from that, I think we would see quite a shift, and probably quite quickly.
It's about what inclusion means, really, isn't it? Don't you think? We went to a school in Iceland recently that goes globally all over, you were saying, and it's inclusive. And we always say, okay, let's move this, let's change this, let's make this in the class. We went in, it was the most amazing building, incredibly amazing. They have 4 staff to 40, they have 4 staff to 40 children throughout Iceland, that's the thing. But there was no chairs. They had these great big walkthroughs and the sound values and bean bags everywhere. And I'm like, where's the chairs? Where's the table? We don't have tables and chairs, we're inclusive. And we said, but you're not being inclusive, because some children, and apparently the children had put complaints up and everything because they couldn't sit at a table and have a conversation. And isn't it funny? But what is inclusion and equity when you're talking about, the neurodivergent, neurodivergency. Have I said that right, Richard? Yeah. Where's the equity? It's like you say, it's about putting this, it's altering the school structure, the environment. It doesn't cost a fortune, but just thinking about who and what and how we're delivering, and working with children and getting the brain working, having fun, which we can do. I know you said there's 30 children in a class, but not every single child is going to have a different learning need, and you can break it down into certain areas that you can do, but you have to be motivated to do that, don't you? And teachers are feeling worn out. Not all teachers, but many teachers and head teachers are feeling worn out. Their well-being is not in a good place, from what I can gather. So it does go back to what I'm saying. You've got to make sure the staff are feeling good and motivated and having fun, so that can pass on to the children. It's like good parent.
That was a central theme of Well Schools approach that we evaluated. One of the key strands was teachers and teachers and staff, not just the teachers, the classroom teachers, but all staff. And everyone associated with the school, it was all focused on, we need to sort their well-being out first, because that will then help us sort out the well-being of students and support that. And there's lots and lots of empirical work that links that, but the strongest comes from the teacher voice, and it was one of the key strands that came out of our research, is that really emphasizing that connection between teacher well-being and student well-being, and how that works practically. And it was a really strong finding, and really emphasized the need to embed. If you look at well-being, it really is holistic. It's everyone. It's not just all students. It's
about bringing play back into it, isn't it? Because it's like play. This is my summer house. I was saying to Richard earlier this morning, my husband built this in COVID. He's not a builder, by the way. But he's what he was doing to keep himself active and busy, and his brain working in COVID. And it's great. It's a lovely room. But we all have to keep active. And I've lost my plot there now a little bit.
It's about us as adults playing and enjoying life.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that was another big strand of kind of, again, how we support student well-being. There were all different approaches schools were using, but physical activity and movement, sport, but broader than PE curriculums, much broader, was definitely a big strand around kind of well-being and physical well-being, and how interlinked those are as well.
Well, that's another thing that has been reduced, isn't it? A lot of schools have reduced the amount of playtime. Primary schools getting rid of the afternoon break, and secondary schools lunch is half an hour in some, and just think barely time to get out of your classroom, get back to your locker. Think to your own school days, get back to your locker, which might be the other side of the school, and then you're straight back into lessons. And then people say, well, why are they struggling with social connection? Why are they not able to resolve conflicts? Actually, you're not giving them the opportunity to develop those skills, and we're not explicitly teaching them. And it's, like we say, that play element. I have a distinct memory of building Roman forts in year 3, and they were all round our classroom. It must have looked an absolute tip to the caretaker coming in to clean up, but we had a lovely time. And the point is, I remember that. And I wonder now, do students have those same memories of playing and building and just having that free flow, and within that, you develop those negotiating skills. Well, I need the roll of sellotape, yes, but I want the scissors. and all of those things that just otherwise get lost.
We definitely came out,
but it's okay because they could do phonics.
But we do.
Our pupil voice stuff definitely came out. The student said, to support our well-being, mental health, we just want space to talk to one another, whether that is breaks or lunchtime, or within kind of those creative lessons. But definitely we need time to talk to one another. That helps with that building connections and all those other associated skills.
But we were built to socially interact. We're very few, aren't we, the mammals, that when we're born, we need each other. Horses can walk, all the other animals can move. We can't. We're stuck. We have to socially interact. And media and the phones and everything are taking that away from us. And we're actually becoming more peer orientated. Children are. Because schools, when the bigger they are, the less adults around, the less modelling that's going on. They're going toward each other, and you wonder why things are happening the way, things are. And parents are working really hard, so there's very little time for that interaction. Sitting back down at that table and talking, which is what nurture does. You sit around the table. The nurture group part of it was set up that you actually sit and learn those skills, like you say, and play. You need to know that neuroscience behind what's happening. You're learning those skills. And secondary need it probably more than primary, because teachers get it, and there's that movement and playing. And why can't you bring that into the secondary area, in children? And losing playtime, whether it's secondary or primary, they're losing those. They can't play, so we'll take it off them. Makes our life easier. It doesn't actually long term. It does short term, but then all the problems are going on because they don't know how to interact. It's a real struggle, isn't it? And it's understanding where everybody's is, but we should not be taking away playtimes. We should be introducing play into lessons, and
Well,
it's not expensive resources, basic resources, you know.
it's life skills. As
Yes.
adults, all of us, and I know you all know well enough, to know we all have interests, we all have hobbies, we all have families, we all do things. We're not just only doing our work, as it's, although it does feel like it sometimes. But no, we all have different ways of switching off. I talk all the time about, actually, one of my grounding things is to do a puzzle. And I did an 8,000 piece puzzle recently. Took me just over 6 months, 6 months and 3 weeks or something like that, to do an 8,000 piece puzzle. I was honestly, but it grounded me. But that's because I know what play activities make me happy. And it's not a social, well, it can be a social activity, but that's really important. And that's something that I learned, in my childhood. Actually, what do I enjoy doing, and what do I like doing with my friends? And actually, as adults, we do that. So it's life skills, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Has to be. And if they've not had it, they've not experienced it, your brain develops through the experiences that you have, doesn't it? And if your neural pathways are developed, if they're not, they're stuck. So they're not going to develop because they're not seeing anything. They're not learning anything. They're just, on a computer. There's a lot of schools now that have laptops for every child, and there's no paper. Yeah, and they don't use pen and paper. I have a very good friend who is in charge of AI at a university. And the first thing he does when his students arrive, he gets pen and paper out. And they said, put your laptops away because we want you to be creative. So, and it's through the drawing and the writing that creativity stems from. So, some schools, I think, is it Norway? I'm not sure, that's going back. They've said to pen and paper. We're only just getting into it. Going away. But sorry, Richard. Go.
No, I was gonna say we're kind of drawing up to time at this point. So I was just going to just ask each of you, if there was one thing that someone listening to this, whether they work in a primary school, secondary school, whether they're working in further education, and there was one thing they could do to better support wellbeing, whether it's staff wellbeing, whether it's pupil wellbeing, or universal wellbeing, what if there was one thing? Choose one thing. I'm putting you on the spot now, guys. What would you say it is?
I know what mine is.
Go on.
So I would say to people, who was your favourite teacher at school and why? And I'm pretty confident that it will come down to the relationship that they built. So can you, as an educator, build that, pass it on, build that with not every child, that's not possible. But can you build those relationships? Can you model that and start to then hopefully feed that through your school?
I would say, agree with you there, Claire. It's that what you want to see, model it. I remember a teacher going, don't you shout in my school, but you're shouting at me. I had to hide around the corner. So, and it is that model what you want to see. And don't forget to make yourself a little bit vulnerable, because, and that's just have a bit of fun, and don't feel bad about looking a bit silly, because children are watching, and they'll smile and have fun and relax, and you're about relaxing your brain as well as theirs, so that would be mine. Count how many times you laugh in the day, whether it's a quiet one, or if you're not.
I suppose on a related theme, mine would be look after your own well-being as an educator, because your well-being will impact your students' well-being.
Absolutely.
So I think all those, they all interlink, don't they?
Yeah.
Definitely, yes. And I would say, I'm very mindful of you've got to be in a good place. At the end of the day, you've got to be in a good place in order to, because at the end of the day, we're trying to meet the needs of so many people.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that all of us actually, because none of us are in the classroom anymore. All of us, for whatever reason, have come back. You know, I left the classroom. Oh gosh, when did I leave the classroom? 16, 17 years ago. I left the classroom because I wanted to actually have an impact on more young people, and that's why I chose to leave the classroom. And if I wasn't in a position where actually I could mentally handle that. You know, actually, I'm working all over the country. And sometimes I'm going to go, like you, Yvonne, I'm going to go. You have to be in the right place to be able to do that and to be able to inspire people. And this is what we're doing for the next generation. This is their world. This is part of us handing it over to them. And actually, part of that should be actually how to get the most out of life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love going back in the classroom, but I wouldn't want to be in there every day. It's hard work, but I love it. You know, when you go back in and you connect with children and staff, like you said, you hopefully inspire them, but you know, let them be aware of the good work that they're doing, because they don't get praised enough.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right, well, this is where we're going to leave it for today. So thank you all very much. For anyone watching this, please make sure that we're going to see you, and you'll see some of these lovely guests at our regional conferences. Come along to our regional conferences. We've got 4 this year. I think we're going up to 6 or 7 next year. They are expanding beyond more than I can cope with, which is why I have a team. So anyway, do please make sure that you're coming along to one of our conferences and joining in these conversations. Thank you, the 3 of you. Thank you so much for your time. It really is useful and really is beneficial. All right, so we'll say goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.